is I'm going to turn my camera off um, because I live not entirely far south of some Amish country, and sometimes my internet likes to pretend that it is Amish also, and not have a lot of bandwidth. So, um, if my connection gets a little dodgy, yell at me, and I'll hold up for a second and let it catch up. The squirrels sometimes need a little extra feed to get the internet working. So, yes, I met Larry in at Indy Junction, and so I've had over a year to prepare for this. And the I gave this clinic a couple of years ago at our Franklin train show, and there were several people who liked the pieces, and I didn't think I would ever need them again, so I gave them away. And so over the last year, I've thought frequently about I need to rebuild those so that I can do a proper clinic, because the first one was in person, and I kind of demoed some of the products. And yeah, so I waited until about 3 weeks ago to start. um, all right, so this is how I model water. Again, I am the superintendent from the Central Indiana Division, and the things that I'll show you today aren't often geared towards model railroaders. Although the companies are kind of coming around and they're thinking a little bit, these are some non-typical model railroad products. So, so what this clinic is and what it's not. We'll start with the what it's not. It's not my saying of this is the best way to model water. It is not perfect for every application. It's not from a particularly organized mind, and we'll cover that more in a second. It's not only success stories either, because clinics that are just flawless and everything goes perfect, I don't know about you, but I don't model that way. I would love to model that way. It's just not the way it ever works out. So things that didn't go so well are noted in here as well, and I'll point those out. And it's not non-interactive. So it depends on you guys asking questions along the way. What it is hopefully some new tools for your modeling toolbox. Some interesting products I found, and it's an attempt at abusing those products into interesting modeling, other than what they're really necessarily intended for. From a mind with way more than a passing resemblance of mad scientists. In my basement here, I mix my own paint for things that I want to rust. I've mixed iron filings with PVA glue and matte medium, which creates this lovely dull gray iron paint. And when you spike that paint with salt and vinegar, it looks like nothing different is happening when you apply it, but later on, it will rust itself and be contained within a coating that doesn't rub off. So, mad scientist stuff down here, and my gears are always turning of how can I use this a little bit differently. And this clinic is definitely interactive. So, if you have a question as we go through, I'm not headed back to topics necessarily. It's fairly linear through, so don't hesitate to yell. All right, so we're going to start with waterfalls and streams, because this is kind of where I started with this process. And as you can see by the image, acetate forms the back of the waterfall. So pretty standard so far, but there is definitely trouble afoot in this image, as we'll come to see shortly here. I didn't cover the base on how I made this. It's construction foam and Sculptamold, some grout, chalk, all that good stuff. I figured that's pretty standard. So the first product that I came across and use is made by AK Interactive, and it is water gel effects. This is really intended to form waves. You could use it if you have a ship and you want a lot of foam and froth at the bow as it's cutting through water. This stuff is perfect for that. It does some really interesting effects, but it's marketed mostly to military modelers and diorama guys, not really model railroaders. So my question was, what is different about this when I picked up the jar? Reading on here, it it's great for moving water. You wouldn't really want to use this for stationary water. It'd just be kind of a waste, and there are better products than this to use. But I did find it interesting in here. It notes that it is low odor. I use this stuff without ventilation, and it's perfectly fine. But it is a resin and acrylic product, so a little bit different than just using a pure acrylic paste. The one thing I love about it is this is applied and built in place. No need to do a horizontal, work up your water and then apply it vertically. You can attach your acetate in and have at it, and it will stay. It has it's very sticky, kind of thick stuff. So it applies. It goes on totally white like this, so you can see. You can see when you've missed spot. I assume you guys can see my cursor. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see when you miss spots and leave holes and things like that. Um, the nice thing is it starts out completely opaque, but as it dries, it goes clear. So I added the waterfall here. I got it started up at the top, and just worked with a brush as it, downward, in the flow of the water. Um, One nice thing is it's water cleanup. So when you're done with your brush, I wouldn't use really expensive brushes to do this, but your typical $8, $9 a set brushes are perfect for this. Throw it in some water when you're done and wash it out, and your brush will not suffer for using this product. You can see here, I added the second side on here. The visibility makes it nice because you see where I've applied it. When it dries clear, it's a pretty it's a little well, I'll show you in the next slide here. One thing to note is I attached this at the top with the water effects gel, or water gel effects. And at the bottom, this is too short. The acetate actually ends right here. There is nothing under this section at all. This just hangs free form down the side of the cliff here. I simply took and pushed the gel up, and it stays. So you don't even have to totally have a solid backing behind it. You can bridge short gaps with it, and the surface tension will hold. You can also, because big waterfalls often have little friends beside them, this stuff will hold onto just about anything. This is on this side. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It depends on how big you have this on the image. But I used a clear fishing line down here. Just spot glued it from one end to the other, and then just began dabbing on the paste. And you can see I got a drop there, and man, it stuck tight. It wasn't going anywhere. And sometimes you have to decide, if you muck it up a little bit and get it to where it's not exactly where you want, can you live with it that way? Because if you wipe it off, it will still be there unless you go back over and paint over it. It'll still leave a watery shine to it. And so literally just tapping it onto the fishing line, this is what I ended up with. And you can see you can vary it by the amount you dab on there. You can change the overall thickness of the stream. Here below, you can see how much distance there is between the bottom of the ground and the bottom of that acetate. This is also the first failure in this piece is very visible here. I glued a section on here because the acetate sheet just wasn't long enough. And so I glued it on thinking, well, surely that won't be visible under all of this. That was a big no, that's not correct. That line, you will see it in every picture after this. Despite my absolute best attempt, I couldn't make the scene go away. Now, I docked it enough that I think most people might miss it, but man, I see it every time I look at the piece. So that's make sure that with this you are using the full length, because anything you piece together will be very visible under all this. All right, so this is applying the stuff to the bottom of the stream. Waterfalls shoot down with a lot of force. They scatter out with foam. And so I wanted to replicate that foam hitting the ground and moving under the water, under the surface of it. So this is the very beginning of putting it out. And as you can see, it kind of self-levels, more like it blobs together. And the blobs will be smooth. Um, Here you can see I've added more. I've went around rocks. I've tried to think of how water looks, used some photo references, that sort of thing. But you can tell there's a difference between this picture and this picture over here. As I've added more, this has started to set. I've went back over it with a brush, kind of testing how set it is. You can see now how there is a wave with a drip on the end here. This is about probably 10 minutes in from applying it, and it's starting to set and will now start to hold the shapes that you brush into it. This is about another 10 minutes along. You can see how there are edges that stand up. This has a crest piece that actually bends over. You can see that you can really texture up the water. In all honesty, if I hadn't made such a large waterfall, I probably a waterfall half this, I probably wouldn't have bothered with doing much more beyond this, because it makes a great whitewater effect. But you can see just how much texture you can push into it with a brush. So super easy to work with. You just got to have a little patience to wait on it to work. Here's some more of that. Here's the side work where the small little rivulet of water comes down, and the cascading and kind of sheeting that I did down the side of the rock. Again, just all pure paintbrush work. And here it is after the next day. It does take it a while to go completely clear. And if you're going to pretty much stop here, then you're good to go. You could even work and do a little painting before it goes totally clear. After this, or if you're going to add other things on top of it, though, you need to give it the chance to get completely clear like this. So a solid 8 hours and you're in business, depending on the humidity, of course. So you can see that darn seam is still there. It has not went away. You can see that it's nice and clear, but there's not a lot of shine to this. It's kind of watery looking, but in my opinion, not terribly so. But you can see there's a lot of flow and animation in this material, so I really like it. Then if you've done water and you've done any rapid work or anything like that where you just dry brush on some white paint, that's what I have done here. I just went back over it and tried to pick up all of the highlights on it and leave all of the low-lying stuff alone, and just kind of tried to fade it out as it goes. Again, this is not a bad result if you're doing a really fast moving small waterfall. I tried to add enough white paint to make the seam go away, and as you can see, it didn't work. All right, so we need to add some shine back to the water and make it actually look like it's a waterfall again. So to do that, I go back over the top with Mod Podge or Mod Podge. Since Mod Podge is an acrylic sort of thing, it doesn't interact in an unpleasant way with the water effects gel. So you can just brush it right on top. The nice thing is that the Mod Podge is not a lot more flowing than the water effects or water gel effects is, and so they'll kind of set up pretty nicely together. And it will definitely add a lot of shine back. It's and why not just use it if you've ever tried, especially on a vertical surface. It's really hard to put that degree of texture into the Mod Podge and get it to hold. If you're just modeling a relatively slow moving stream, though, this is a much better way to go than the water gel effects. It's a lot less expensive and it works nice. And so, but this over the top will give us back a nice shine. So if I had not painted the water, it would be invisible for the most part. You would not see it under anything else that you add to it. The water from a waterfall shoots out, it's oxygenated, it hits, but the water pool on the top, while agitated, doesn't look like that. And if you see a strong waterfall, you can see the foam shooting underneath the surface of the water. So that is what I tried to accomplish here. Pool depth changes. That's where source material is really good to use for the type of waterfall that you're modeling. Yeah, also it does work great just on like I said, by itself on the bottom of a stream, as the stream. But then I went back and I used Woodland Scenics Realistic Water and poured over the top of it. It took me about 4 pours to get the depth that I wanted. And as you can see by the slight milky tinge everywhere in it, it still isn't fully cured. And as I look at it here in my somewhat humid basement, it still isn't 100% cured. So it takes a long time. But you can see the effect here of I dry brushed just some white wisps on top of the water, but you can see the other material underneath forming a lot of movement under the surface of the water. And you can see it just looks nice and turbulent and gives you a depth that you otherwise is really hard to do with just the water, the realistic water. I suppose you could probably stop in between layers and paint and such, but this just worked for me a whole lot nicer. And so that is the finished product. I didn't put anything over the surface of the water because I wanted you to be able to clearly see the depth and the distance between the two. But you could go over this with the Woodland Scenics water effects, because that'll stay shinier and not make you Mod Podge it. But you could certainly put effects over the top, where I went with just paint for visibility in this case. Up on top of the waterfall up here, that is water gel effect. Also, there's nothing there. I didn't have to dam it up to hold it or anything. You just put it on there and go. And I just left it clear and then Mod Podged over it. Anybody have any questions? Anybody like the effect? All right.
The acrylic gel that you started with, can you, once you put one layer down, can you put some more on there if you want it thicker, or?
Oh, absolutely. You can really stack it up. Unfortunately, I don't even have a good picture of the original piece that I built, but I built a deeper plunge pool, and the waterfall itself, instead of being a wide sheet like this, was just a more direct stream. And so I put the plunge in, instead of the water instantly hitting shallow surface and sliding onward. The pool was deep enough that the water shot down, hit the bottom, and came back up. And so it was a very three-dimensional. Um, the gel was very three-dimensional on how it hit and shot back upwards. And that was multiple layers of doing it. So yeah, you can really build that up very thick. And the amount of usage on this project is tiny compared to the bottle. I've done this twice now and used it on some other projects as well, and I have a solid half a jar left. So, all right. So, on to my next project, also by AK Interactive. This is puddles, and I kind of like it and I kind of don't, but I included it in here because it may work out well for somebody else. When you put it on, it has almost a really odd gray milkiness to it. It looks bizarre when you apply it, but it has some green in it. Um, and as it cures, what I think happens is that color pigment settles to the bottom and kind of clumps up. And so you get this clear over it, but there's areas where there's sliminess, algae, plant life, that sort of thing. Um, it can be further enhanced after you have applied it. You can enhance around the area with other colored mediums. I like alcohol-based ink a lot. You can buy it from the your favorite hobby/craft store. They sell it as refills for alcohol ink markers, and you can grab a container of green and use it. And I'll show you that in a moment. I dug one of them out. I don't have it in pictures, but I'll turn my camera on and show. Um, you have to pour this at no more than 1/8 of an inch thick. And even that's probably pushing it. It really probably likes more like a 1/16 of an inch thick. Takes a little while to dry, but if you pour it deeper than that, it will crack on you. It will contract and leave big cracks all through it. Now, the beauty of it is you can then re-pour a little on top of it and set it aside again and go on about your business. And you can fill in those cracks. You always see them to a degree, but I don't know that it's necessarily a bad effect. And certainly, if you want to model mud, how the puddles dried up, but the ground's still wet and the mud cracks really badly, you could chalk over the top of it and kill a lot of the shine, and the crack would actually work well as drying mud. This is the piece I made for it. It's just sculpted mold. This was a real simple project, but if you want a gnarly, dirty, nasty, muddy road, this is a reasonable way to achieve it. So the alcohol ink, I have put it around in places. I put way too much right there, and so you get a super dark green blob. Don't do that. Apply it very, very a lot thinner, and you can tag in around the edges here on this stuff after it's dried, and you can get a really nice effect from it, and it makes life generally easier creating puddles. But you can see how the color of the puddle, and this is not altered any. This is just the product over this same muddy earth tone. So again, you can see here where I hit it way too hard with the alcohol ink here. And then other places along here, it just adds a nice bit of green. Any questions on that one? All right. it's one of my less favorite products, but I bought the bottle of it and I have played with it, and um, I'm still not convinced I have gotten it all totally right, but it does do a good job of making a puddle for you. All right, the last one where we really depart the normal water modeling uh, is we can model some odd stuff here. If you've ever wanted to model a raining scene where rain is an active thing happening, then we can do that with these products. We can use some of them to do standing water. It isn't a long-term puddle. Wet roofing, wet pavement, brick, asphalt, and actual rain itself. So we're going to add a new product here. It is a competing company to AK. This stuff is called Wet Effects. It's by a company called Emo by Mig Jimenez. Mig used to work with AK and split off into his own company. Now, I will tell you, if you decide to go look for where you can find these products together, good luck, because I kind of think they edge each other out and don't allow stores to sell each other's product too openly. But if you are on Facebook and you ask about either of these products, I can tell you from experience, unless you want a 30-day timeout, make sure you put AK Interactive and Ammo by MiG, or Facebook will assume you are trying to buy weapons and ammo together, and they don't really like that very much. The fact that you ask about it in a hobby model railroad forum will do no favor for you getting out of jail early. So on this particular piece, we're going to use a little bit of all of this. I've used Mod Podge, water effects, and the wet effects. And so this is a mixed medium piece. The Mod Podge gives you super gloss. Use it where it's easier. It's by far the cheapest product to use. It's pretty easy to apply. Where you want it to look like you have pooling water, such as here in the grass, this is just Mod Podge thickly applied in over the foam. Works just as well with static grass, although if I were doing static grass, I might treat it dually. I might put down my standing water areas first, let that cure, and then add my grass to the top of it if it's very long, because Mod Podge has a higher surface tension to it and adhesion to wherever you apply it. But if you're using foam, it goes on super easy. You can even wet it just a little bit, add a tiny bit of water to it to get it to flow a little better. Landscaping elements where the water is not draining so fantastically works great. The mulch back in here, which I just did with ground up leaves from outside last fall, ran them through a coffee grinder, which if you do that, that's the last time you should ever use that coffee grinder for anything other than scenery, because it'll get everywhere inside. But I created a mulch bed here in the bushes, and that is just Mod Podge over the top of it. The grass is done that way. What it doesn't do is cover branch and fine structures very well. It's hard to get exactly where you want it, although you can use things like saline syringes. You can buy those. You can load it into there and then eject it to exactly where you want it. But still, it doesn't handle foliage well. The water gel effects. So that, again, orientation doesn't matter. It can be applied in several layers. No self-leveling really to speak of. Like I said, it'll kind of blob, but as it goes and begins to cure, you can change that. It is way too thick to use as a pooling medium here. It just will sit right on top of the foam, and it'll take forever. And when you're done, you will have stuff both below the surface of the foam and on top of the foam where it just sat there and dried. and again, it's not very shiny, so you're going to have to go over something else with it. Then the wet effects, it is a shiny acrylic, I think, coat. I don't know what this stuff is made with. Coats odd shapes extremely well. Fine foliage like this will hold it. It'll surface tension to it, and it'll stick, and it will shine it all up for you. It's not an overstated effect, so it's a little more subtle, which actually makes it kind of nice, because it's not like it shines like, a flashlight when you hit it with a light. It just looks wet. The bad part, it is also fully self-leveling. If you put it on a flat surface, it will spread to its absolute maximum coverage area. So there is no tension to it whatsoever, which does make it nice for brushing over surfaces. The bad part is the fumes smell awful. It will give you a headache if you use it in enclosed space. And there is a warning on the back, a respiratory thing that says danger, which is the most extensive material safety sheet. So use it in good ventilation. I applied it here, and I went and set this piece outside and let it cure out there. You can see the mulch area up here. You can see the foliage that just has a shine to it and is kind of wet. It'll mat down just a little bit, which also kind of does a good job at modeling the weight of the water on something. Gel Effects was used on the sidewalk here. Then mostly Mod Podge here, and I think I may have hit this again with the wet effects afterwards. Wet effects is interesting because if you glop it on and you apply a heavy coat, you get a real shine like this. If you don't apply it heavy, you get almost a darkening effect, like something is wet, but it was really wet earlier and now it's not so much wet now. It's begun that drying process. The wood that you apply it to has it's saturated and drank in all of the material, all the water that it can, and so that's kind of the effect you get from it. Then I decided at one point in playing with this, because I could pick it up to such a large degree, that maybe I just make rain and model actual raindrops. And so I used a dollar sheet of craft foam. I love that stuff for asphalt. And I wanted kind of an older asphalt look, so I went with the gray, and I painted it on. And then I used the syringes, the saline syringes I was talking about. I bought a box of various gauge blunt tips for those. And so I just grabbed one of those out that's like, yeah, that's about the size I want. And you just tap it in the material, and in places it just leaves holes, but others it actually forms the drop that comes back up when rain smacks the ground. And you can see there, you can actually model drops, drip, not just rain, anywhere that water is actually coming down and hitting the ground. And as you can see, I was a little pressed for time, and I got some the foam out there, and I decided that's just grass clippings from the last time the lawn was mowed there, and it has washed out into the rain area. But you can see that you can really shape this stuff afterwards, as long as you use a very fine pointed item or some form of a tube to do this as well. You could also use a pick. The finer the pick, the finer the drop formation coming up will be. So yeah, this is this diorama and how I ended up with that. We could definitely do more to it, and I do have a warning for you on modeling wet surfaces like this that I learned. Anybody have any question on this one?
No,
All right. So you can descend into complete madness. And instead of removing the shine from your favorite plastic buildings, these are DPM kits, you can just shovel the shine on and make the whole scene look rainy and wet. And it feels really weird to do so. Really bizarre in shining things back up, more so than they were originally. So this got a coat of Mod Podge on everything to have that nice shiny wet surface. You can see it's a little heavy, I think, in the scene here, but in the background you can see that there's areas of the brick that shine up and some that shine less, and it just has a nice wet effect. But the sidewalk here, which again is craft foam, has a nice shine and reflection to it. There used to be a car here. I apparently knocked the top off when I stored this piece, and I don't know what happened to it, but it's apparently not a very good neighborhood. They won't steal your tires; they'll steal everything above it. But here you can see just modeling in this road. The foliage is just all saturated. So this is a very active weather sort of scene. You can see the brick shines from the building. Vehicles got coated. Absolutely everything. The front of the building shines as well that way. You can see some water running down the street. Tops of the roof buildings, same sort of thing. You know, I did gravel rooftops for these, and they're going to hold some water. And I wanted them to shine up nicely that way. This one being a typical tar roof, you can see there are, you know, inks from the raindrops on the top of the roof. And then the nice thing is, again, you can layer up, because I've never seen weathering or any other form of scenery that looks good in one single pass where you apply one material and you're done and out and it looks fantastic. It's a layering process. And you know, a lot of what makes this work is the paint layering below it that gives it a good solid weathering effect, and then applying this over the top kind of amplifies that. Well, this is what happens too. All that rain up on the roof has to go somewhere. And so I made a downspout. I used the water effects gel to be able to create the flow of water down the brick alley here. And again, up here, I just really kind of rippled it with brush and just dabbed it out, and then hit it with a tiny bit of white paint to make that frothy flow from the drain pipe. This would be good, you know, hoses, anything that you need a stream of water running somewhere, that's a great stuff to use. All right, so I told you that I had a warning on that. Your lighting of some of this material is absolutely critical in pulling off the overall effect. This piece that I built, the DPM kits, our division has an annual 100 by 100 contest where it has a theme, and you have 100 scale feet, regardless of what scale you work in, to get the job done. And so this one was just model water. So when I'm working on my desk, right above here, about 4 feet above, is a 4,500 lumen LED light. It's bright here. My camera darkens the image in order to keep it from being kind of washed out. It's very noonday sun look. That's how I modeled that piece. That's what I modeled it. So my decision on, do I have things that look wet enough, was based on the lighting here. So I took it to the fairgrounds, and when, you know, the ceilings are about 20 feet tall in that building, and big old I don't know if they're fluorescent lights or what they were, but they're a long way up off of the table, and they're really diffuse compared to my lighting. It didn't look wet at all. You saw no shine. In fact, I got one sympathy vote by somebody because it was that bad at hitting the theme. Like, nothing looked wet except for the places where it was puddled thick enough to be obviously a puddle. You know, the stream of water down the brick alley, even that didn't show up really strong. You had to kind of look at it to see it. So with all of these water products, my beware statement is make sure that you test under your layout with your layout lighting to make sure that this stuff is going to show up, or you can put a whole lot of time and effort into it and it just doesn't stand out in the end. So
rotten luck.
say what?
Rotten luck.
Yeah. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, people ask me, where's the water? I'm like, you know, if the lighting was in better in here for this, you would see there's no place that doesn't have water. And that's it. Thanks for having me, guys.